Constructivism, challenging symbolic processing models. Right? Now, symbolic processing research has focused on knowledge representation and memory, and recently on the learning of school subjects such as reading, writing, science, and mathematics. Information processing theories believe that we actively construct knowledge based on what we already know and the new information we encounter. So these approaches are constructivist, at least in a narrow sense. But as you will soon see, many researchers and educators believe that these symbolic processing approaches do not take the idea of knowledge construction far enough. Right? Now, Gestalt, which means something like pattern or configuration in German, refers to people's tendency to organize sensory information into patterns or relationships. So instead of perceiving bits and pieces of unrelated information, the human brain transforms objective reality into mental events organized as meaningful wholes. Now, I will show you this here. Let's take a look at this here. All right. If we try to memorize this here, it is difficult, or even trying to make sense of it. Okay, make sense of it. Now, subjects show better memory of this picture when they can recognize a dog. This is a dog. See that? This is dog. Right? The tail here, the head here, this is foot, hind leg. Okay, and this is likely to be what? A tree here or something like that. Okay, so once we can see it, you can see the dog, then we can process this. We can remember this one much better. Okay, much better. All right, let's go back here. F.C. Bartlett here, this guy was another early constructivist theorist. His studies of the constructive nature of remembering. Remember, I talked about this, the indigenous trip seal hunt, later on translated into fish hunt, that type of thing. Okay, so here highlighted the fact that remembering is more than recall. As we remember, we often create meaning based on what we know and what we expect. Now, remember, there are holes in our long-term memory, and we are not even aware of that. And we fill in those holes with whatever we will see fit. So we reconstruct our long-term memory. All right. Okay. Let's take a look at knowledge, accuracy versus usefulness. Okay. A fundamental difference between symbolic processing and constructivist perspectives is that symbolic theorists assume the world is knowable. There is an objective reality out there. and an individual can form a relatively complete understanding of it. Now, many of the more radical cognitive constructivist perspectives, on the other hand, do not assume that the world is knowable. It suggests that all knowledge is constructed and based upon not only prior knowledge, but also the cultural and social context. They point out that what is true in one time and place, such as the fact before Columbus' time that the earth was flat, becomes false in another time and place. Constructivists are not concerned with accurate, true representations of the world, but only with useful constructions. For example, young kids believe in Santa Claus, but adults don't, but some adults still do. All right, so that kind of thing. All right, now learning, individual versus social. So a second difference between information processing and many of the current constructivist perspectives is that information processing theorists tend to focus on the individual information processes as he or she tries to make sense of the world. Thus, cognitive psychologists study individual and developmental differences, but may ignore the social situation in which learning occurs. Remember Vygotsky? So in contrast, social constructivist approaches affirm Vygotsky's notion that learning is inherently social and embedded in a particular cultural setting. Remember scaffolding, apprenticeship. So learning in the real world is not like learning in school. It is more like an apprenticeship where novices, with the support of an expert guide and model, take on more and more responsibility until they are able to function independently. Now, for the social constructivist, this explains learning in factories, around the dinner table, in high school halls, in street gangs, in the business office, and on the playground, because learning takes place in a social situation. The norms of the group and the identity of the individual in the group must be considered. Okay. For example, a lot of people learn in the workplace. Another example is that CEO of a business has academic background far removed from the business. Right? So that the kind of thing is that, well, a lot of people, they earn a living not from what they have learned or what they have prepared in school. It's something quite different. Right? So constructivist. Right? So let's take a look here. Now, we never learned this, but we know how to process it. Is that right? That's what constructivity, we construct it, okay? That's the constructivist approach. Say, you know how to do that? Well, this really test your spell check I what couldn't believe that I could what I could what is it? I could what already what understand what I was reading, the phenomenal power of the human mind. Okay, according to a researcher at Cambridge University, it doesn't matter in what order the letters in the word are. The only important thing is that the first and the last letter be in the right place. The rest can be a total mess, and you can still read it without a problem. Is that right? So this is because what the human mind does not read every letter by itself, but the word as a whole. Amazing, huh? Yeah. And I always thought was sleeping was important, spelling was important, right? So that type of thing. Okay, you could read it. Right? Okay, take a look at this here. Some examples here. Examples of Gestalt psychology. It is well. I'm pretty sure you have what you have seen all this here in first year psychology. Okay, first year psychology. Well, remember my first lecture, figure and ground, the skull and the woman in front of a mirror. Remember that? So here, so just the principles of perception explain how we see patterns in the world around us. Okay, figure and ground. Okay, what do you see? Faces or a vase? Okay, so so make one figure, the other's ground. So proximity. You see what these lines as three groups because of the proximity of the lines. You don't see it as 9 lines here, but 3 groups of lines. Similarity. Okay, you see these lines as an alternating pattern because of the similarity in height of line. Short, 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 tall, 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 short, 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 tall, tall, tall. Proximity outweighing what similarity. You see these lines as proximal proximal groups instead of similar height. Okay, so proximity instead of similar height, okay, that type of thing. So here, common direction, you perceive a continuous line going up and down. See, down, up, so on. Simplicity, you perceive 2 whole shapes instead of 5 separate shapes. Okay? So we simplified the incoming information. Closure, you perceive a circle instead of dotted curved lines. Right? So that simplified the bits and pieces of information are also so therefore they become meaningful. Right? Okay. All right, take a look at comparing cognitive and behavioral view. Behavioral, new behaviors are learned. No mention of knowledge because it cannot be observed below the iceberg, right? Cognitive view, knowledge is learned, and changes in knowledge make changes in behavior possible. All right? So what a difference here. Okay? Reinforcement strengthens responses. Well, that's what SR and then reinforcement. That is what reinforcement is, very basic of Skinner's theory. Right? Reinforcement, the cognitive view, reinforcement as a source of feedback about what is likely to happen if behaviors are repeated. Right? So what is likely to happen as behaviors are repeated? Here, people are passively influenced by environmental systems. Remember operant conditioning? people are considered what? Passive recipients of information, okay, very passive. Learning is passive, trial and error. But in the cognitive view, the people are seen as active learners. We try to seek meaning, right? Older cognitive view emphasize the acquisition of knowledge, but new approach stress what? New approaches stress its construction, okay? The constructivistic view. Okay? In the behavioral view, subject equal to animals in control the lab setting, and then what? And they hope that what? By understanding animal behaviors will shed light on understanding human behavior. Okay, so there's a branch what called comparative psychology. Okay, here subject is humans in a wide range of learning situation. Okay, it's quite different from this, right? Now, the goal in the behavioral view is to identify a few general laws of learning that apply to all higher organisms, including humans, regardless of age, IQ, or other individual differences. This is too naive, isn't it? Very naive. It focuses on individual and developmental differences in cognition, the stages of development, okay? And we need to understand the stage so that we will understand behaviors, all right? Okay, good, and thank you.